Hey y'all, I'm back with the first interview of season 2 of Spotlight with Britt. This interview is a little personal, not only because Barbara Hanvey, who will be interviewed, is telling her story of her journey through her son's addiction, but also it touches on some personal history that I have with family and friends who have fought an addiction and overcome it, or unfortunately did not make it out. And just know that the further we go into season 2, there will be more conversations about God because the light in Spotlight has to do with God. Us being the light and sharing with others the beauty that can come from a relationship with Him. According to recoveryways.com, more than 932,000 people have died since 1999 from a drug overdose. Overdose deaths involving opioids, including prescription opioids, heroin, and synthetic opioids like fentanyl, have increased by more than 8 times since 1999. National Recovery Month started in 1989 and is a national observance held every September to promote and support new evidence-based treatment and recovery practices, the nation's strong and proud recovery community, and the dedication of service providers and communities who make recovery in all its forms possible, according to SAMHSA.gov. SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, aims to increase public awareness surrounding mental health and addiction recovery. In the year since Recovery Month launched, SAMHSA has timed announcements of initiatives and grant funding during Recovery Month, while collaborating with private and public entities to celebrate individuals during their long-term recoveries. Recovery Month celebrates the gains made by those in recovery, just as we celebrate health improvements made by those who are managing other health conditions, such as hypertension, diabetes, asthma, and heart disease. This observance reinforces the positive message that behavioral health is essential to overall health, prevention works, treatment is effective, and people can and do recover. Welcome back to Spotlight with Britt, an inspirational podcast full of stories of perseverance, faith, and the ability to fail forward. You will hear stories of hope and happiness, downturns and defeat, but all in all, a positive look on things that we might not see as such beautiful spots of light in our life. Open up my hands, you open up my eyes, I let go. With me today is Miss Barbara Hanvey, and I met Miss Barbara at the long-term podcast launch here at Exodus. Her story really captivated my interest, and so that's why we have her here today. So, Miss Barbara, you tell us who you are and a little bit about your book and why you decided to write it.
Okay, and my name's Barbara Hanvey, and I'm originally from Washington State, but I've lived in Arkansas since 1985. And I had a son that has had addiction issues, and we struggled for like 10 years since he was like 14 years old. And it was a story that I thought that needed to be told because he was telling the story himself after he got out of rehab and so forth. He was starting to help people and tell them about his life experiences. He wrote a testimony of things that he'd done, and he was helping many others. And I had people even come to me and tell me how he was helping them. So, in my grief, I was so stuck that I couldn't really speak about losing my son, Spencer, to fentanyl, an overdose, and it's plaguing our country. And for a year, just all I could do is journal and write down my feelings. And I'd always kind of done that, but I could not talk about it. The pain was just too immense, too hard. Losing a child, as many people know that have lost children, it's unbearable. So as I was journaling and writing down my feelings, it just started evolving. And then I had people, my loved ones, say, "Well, why don't you have a story to tell? Why don't you tell others about this story and see if you can help people?" So I started, it started evolving into a book, and it was hard to do because I had always protected him through his addiction issues. I didn't want to share, be vulnerable. It's so hard because you want to protect them and not let people know their struggles at that time. It just was, there was so much stigma attached to it. And so I was keeping things private, but writing them down, and it started evolving into a book. And I want to help other people to know my story. And I don't just talk about all the good things. He was a wonderful son, but I do specifically get into details that as a mom that I would do different. And I really want to help other moms, and I want to help other families, and I want them to know what his story was about, because I really believe that's what he would be doing today, is sharing his story with others.
Yeah, so fentanyl, a mother's journey through her son's addiction. I have read it almost all the way through. And I feel like the ending is going to, I know some people, like when they're reading a book, they'll start at the end and then they'll go back and read the beginning.
Right.
I don't like doing that. And I wanted to get through our interview, and then I'm going to finish reading it this week. But like one of the opening quotes that you have in there was talking about when, he was playing baseball and how great of a baseball player that he was, and that he ran to third base instead of first base. And I thought that was so funny because I told you, like, I did that when I was playing softball when I was a kid.
Right.
And how throughout that book and the stories that you tell, how much he really wanted to be there for other people and lift other people up. And you said that one thing you told me was that he was really for the underdog.
Yes.
And he wanted to make sure that everyone felt included.
Yes.
And like what you were saying, well, it was another line in the book, but it talked about, making sure that everyone has at least one person that they can trust, that loves them and is there for them no matter what. And you can definitely tell through the stories and just the time that we spent together, obviously that is something that you did with him, and he knew that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this picture real quick?
Thank you, Brittany. Yes, this was after he had gone through recovery for a year, and his light was in his eyes, and we were at a church, and he was with some other buddies, and they were actually doing a promotion for John 3:16 Ministries. So it was so good to see him happy and the light in his eyes and hugging other friends, and but that's where we were at that time, and it just worked out where the crosses were in the back. And so this was him, after that, and it just was such a great feeling to see that come back, because that's the vision on the book. What I have is him prior to being treated for addiction, and then after, and how it changes your life when you could get out. And many people do make it out, but the struggle is real.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because about the cover of the book, because I forget. So most podcasts are just audio, right? But this one, we do the video component as well. But in the event that someone's not listening to, or they're not seeing the video side, they're just listening like on Spotify. We're going to have a picture of the book. So if you can't see it right now, I'm just going to explain it to you. So the upper left corner is the picture of Spencer when he graduated from John 3:16, and the bottom right corner was when he was in the throes of his addiction. And I loved how you explained to me how you got the graphic image and how you chose to do that, with the fentanyl being lit up by the lightning bolt, and just the difference, of the light and, the day, the happiness, and then the darkness that he came out of to get to that point.
Exactly. And that was a wonderful day. seeing him, like I say, interact, because he struggled through depression and anxiety. A lot of it, I think, stemmed from him looking older than others and not fitting in with his age group so much. I don't think he felt like he fit in, but it was so hard to understand that because he was such a gifted athlete. He was so good, and he was raised in the church, and he was a good son, and like I say, it was just hard to understand. Society just puts so much pressure on our young people today, and like I say, trying to fit in with social media, it just exemplifies that in so many ways. And he came through the time when social media had just hit. So I regret, one of my biggest regrets is him having a phone and not necessarily having internet access, but just being able to text message and communicate with people that I didn't always know who they were. And it was new, and I just learned never to give your kids any access to any social media unless you completely understand what it's all about and what it can do, because I didn't even text message at that time when he had that phone. So that's my responsibility. That is my regret. And to definitely, if I could go back, I would read his text messages. So that's when he started communicating with people that he shouldn't have been communicating with, and the influence was not good. And they accepted him. That network of people that were doing drugs, he felt accepted from that group, and he gravitated towards that. And a lot of it would mask his anxiety and his depression. And I really know that even smoking marijuana is where it all began, because that was masking his feelings. So that led to other things.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there aren't many parents anymore that really dig into, like you talked about, I think you mentioned it in the book, talking about like the use of screens and, not trying to totally take control of their life, but being educated so you can educate them. Because obviously when we're younger, we think that we know everything. And, but also from the stories that you talked about and what you've told me, I can tell, that you were a parent that was very involved in his life. And many people, like you said something about the mental health. There's so many kids that could benefit from mental health services.
Exactly.
But I feel like also there are the parents that have the stigma about it, that, they have the old school thinking, and it's like, well, if they haven't experienced it and been through, talk to a counselor or somebody that can walk them through their feelings and potential issues from their past and their childhood, then it is harder to decide and to allow your kid, teenager, youth, what have you, to go and sit through that and, experience that help. But there's many parents that don't take their kids to church anymore.
True.
And there's many parents that they're not involved. They just let the teachers handle the education, and they're not part of it. So I mean, that part, I know that you beat yourself up about a lot of things, but it's unfortunately, like I experienced with my uncle, you can only do so much for a person, and it hurts even more. I know from my Mimi stories, I know it hurts even more if it's your child.
Yes.
And then you lose your child before no parent should have to bury their child.
Exactly.
But you have all of these happy memories that you have put in this book and that you're sharing, and the experiences that you've had, as a mom. Like, tell me about an experience that you went through. Maybe it was in, the last couple years that he was with you, or maybe it was, in that first year or two after losing him. Tell me about an experience that you went through that now, looking back, you can see made you stronger and able to process that grief a little better? And I know you probably have a bunch of them, and it's hard to pick just one.
Well, talking to people and helping others has helped a lot. And I had to kind of detach in a way to let him find his way.
Mm.
And it was a struggle because he was actually on probation. And he was in his early 20s by this time. So we were letting him, find his way. And we figured, well, he's in probation. He certainly won't break the law. He won't do anything like, he won't go back to drugs. And I feel like I was really naive in that, understanding how addiction gets a hold of a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned a lot about the hold it can have on people, and I've learned how to talk to people about this particular circumstance. And Spencer and I became very, very close at the end when he was out of addiction. We were always close, but we really bonded, and I'm really grateful for that time we had together when he was not doing drugs. We had a family that was so close, and even our friends said, I can't believe how well you guys get along. I look back now and I can see hear his laughter, and I even found a snippet on my phone that says, I love you, so I replay that. And just helping other people and carrying his ministry forward is the main thing, and telling his story, because I don't want it to die with him. And I go back to that, but he had a mission he was on to help other people and sharing the gospel, and he could pray better than anybody I know. So he would pray with people, and like I say, he was for the underdog. Or if he saw someone struggling, it goes back to his childhood. He would stick up for his very best friend. So he taught me lessons in things, and he opened my eyes to all kinds of different cultures because he loved all people. And he really, as a mom, he would tell me, we would have these discussions about what he felt was right in the world, and I learned from him. He was a very, very seasoned young man, very mature, and very knowledgeable, and paid attention to detail. So he would correct me if in situations in a nice way. Mom, I really think, don't put people on the spot when they're talking. When they're talking, things like that. It just funny little things that he would teach me, and I learned a lot from him, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know the story that you put in there too about him going on that mission trip and going down and helping after Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
And then just to read the words and how you told the story, I can only imagine how much of a blessing his presence was, not only to the group that he was with, but to those people,
Right.
that he was helping, and like that lady that was stranded in her home. And
Right.
just, it's giving me goosebumps right now just talking about it, because, it is very unfortunate that, like you said, drugs can take a hold of someone. And it, even though he was, appeared to have been a really strong person, it took him, like you said, it took him too young. But not only can your story, I feel, be an inspiration for either mothers that have children that are going through addiction, mothers that lose their child to addiction, even, young people that might
Right.
be going through addiction right now. That,
Exactly.
it's like, hey, I look at it like, oh, well, my mom, is just trying to be controlling, or, my parents, they just want to, handle everything and take over my life. But it's really, at the end of the day, more often than not, the parent cares that much that they want to be there and do for you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we have to make our own choices, and obviously we don't always make the best ones. But your book signing, so people can get an opportunity to come and meet you and purchase your book.
Right.
It'll be this Saturday, September the 14th,
Right.
at the Maumelle Library.
Correct. From 1 to 3.
Okay.
I'll be there, and yeah, it should be a good event. And we're going to be talking about fentanyl. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things about what it is like the chaos of addiction and drugs, and the good things, and the struggles that families go through. That's the thing. The younger families are what I'm noticing that are reading this book are finding out. I'm so glad I read this so I can find out things not to do or red flags to watch out for my child. So that's was an eye opener. There's, like I say, people with young kids, and that's what I want. I want to reach those moms or dads, or like you say, the younger kids. But that's the thing. You just have to really, as a parent, go with your gut. When you feel like something isn't right, don't tell yourself, "Oh, that's just in my head." We have good instincts as parents, and those red flags come up for a reason. And I feel like God gave us that instinct, and we love our kids, and it's just pay attention to those things, and don't say, "Oh, not my child," or because it's just. I didn't even know what fentanyl was. I didn't know what it was. It just I found out after, but I certainly didn't see that on the radar. The thing is, I always knew through addiction there are overdoses, and he was losing friends that he had to this, and he was so devastated about it. So I felt somewhat safe that he knows, he wouldn't want any part of that, and so just one pill, one time. And that's the thing that really I think we need to teach our kids is just don't do it once. Don't take the first one, and tell them as often as you have to. Don't do it one time, because after that, or it could be the final. You don't know what's out there.
Right.
Everything's changed in this world, and it's just senseless that we're losing so many people. It's not just a lot of young kids, but also adults, and that's the thing. It also affects the entire family. It's not just the moms or the dads. It's the sisters and the brothers and the aunts and uncles and grandparents. There's grandparents raising grandchildren because of this. It's just really, it's hurt. And I think it's hurt our whole society. It's so devastating. And I think if you haven't experienced it yourself, you probably know someone who's experienced
Absolutely.
it, or you know someone that's going through it. And it's tough being vulnerable and telling your deep things that you went through like this. But I think it's necessary, and it's not always received. It's a dark topic to talk about, but his life is worth telling the story about, because there's more to him than addiction, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's something through, different of whether it's reading the book or you talking to me about it, yeah, there are hard times, but there are so many other wonderful memories. And like you said, for you to keep telling that story, I mean, you have great chances to tell people, maybe it's planting or watering that seed that gets them to God.
Right.
Or maybe it's that this story makes them take that first step, makes them decide that they do want to go to rehab and get clean and be sober. And, with Exodus, we talk, I mean, that's everything all the time,
Right,
it's
right.
the prison ministry, it's the recovery, it's the peer support. And I fully believe that if he was still here today, that he would most likely be a certified peer specialist.
I have no doubt.
And, it takes a special kind of person, but when you find those answers and you're clear headed again, and you're on fire for God, you know.
Right.
Like you mentioned, how awesome it was that he called you and told you that on Father's Day, right, that he got baptized.
Right. So excited. Joy in his voice. Those were the greatest times. And when he was laughing. And but yeah, being baptized, it meant so much to him. And his relationship with God meant so much. And I'm so grateful that he was a child of God.
Yeah.
And prayer helped us as a family, still helps us as a family. We wouldn't have made it through without that, I know. And I'm just grateful to the Lord for leading this path. And I'm grateful that Spencer was my son and still is my son.
Yeah. And then you know where he is, and you're going to get to see him again one day.
I have no doubt about that.
And I'll get to meet him. I can't wait. Well, tell me real quick. Share with me your experience with therapy and counseling, because I know that y'all went as a family.
Right.
And then he had his time to go and have, you know, just one-on-one with somebody.
Right.
But how do you feel like that affected you? And I'm sure it would be, but would you encourage someone, you know, that's dealing with depression or anxiety or, you know, whatever that trauma may be?
Well, when your kids are not okay, you're, as a parent, for me, I wasn't okay. If he wasn't okay, I wasn't. And trying to get him treatment at that time, and it seems to still be a problem, but they wanted to give him outpatient treatment toward like 2 or 3 times a week. But the pathways in his brain had changed through drugs. I mean, that happens when you're with addiction, changes your pathways, and the dopamine kicks in with addiction, and that's what drives these folks. And so it was so hard trying to find him a place that was not locally where we were. I felt like he needed to be removed from the area, from the contacts of the people.
Yeah.
And a lot of places wanted insurance up. Well, they wanted the particular insurance, or they may or may not take it for mental health.
Yeah.
So you pay up front cash.
Yeah, private pay.
Yes.
And it's extremely expensive.
Yes. So there's that. And I really wanted a faith-based place for him. The thing is also you have to watch out, though, for is when they're in places, rehabs, and there's other people that have addiction as well, and they're not always monitored. So they're getting influence from others, which can be a negative way. So if you have them in a situation, you just want to make sure that they're supervised, or that people are engaging with your child, or your loved one, that they're aware of who they're communicating with. It's a complex issue, and I just see that some things we're making progress. I think some hospitals are starting to open up now more, and bringing in inpatient beds and so forth for them. But I didn't get received well on asking or begging, please help my child. It wasn't like that. There was the stigma. I felt a bit judged by it, and he felt judged. He went actually to a therapist that had him stand up and look in the mirror and say, "Look at yourself. Look how you look." And it was very demeaning to him. And so you don't know who you're going to always get to sit down and talk to, and that was not helpful. These kinds of things could set him back.
Sure.
I know it sounds discouraging, but it was discouraging. We have all these drugs flooding in, but what are we doing to help people that need help? There's parents crying out, crying out for help, and we've got to do it another way. This is not working. And I'm, like I say, in connection on Facebook with people that I'm reading their stories, and like, this was so my story, and I try to encourage. And that's one thing I've been told about the book. Your story is my story. This is what I went through. Exactly. How did you know? So it was hard, and I remember being talked down to at times. I remember a doctor, or actually a therapist, saying to my son, well, I'd rather him smoke pot than smoke cigarettes. So there was that. He's 15 at the time. And
Oh
then,
my gosh.
and a few doctors said things that they just weren't necessarily, they were good doctors, not necessarily trained in this field
Right.
so much. That's what I mean. We need more people in this field,
Mm-hmm.
clearly. And we need to stop the access to these drugs. Whatever. I don't believe that it can't be done. I can't accept that. I don't believe that. And I mean, these drugs are so powerful. These kids will overdose and wake up and then still take the drug again.
I had a friend that did that.
Yeah, I don't understand for the life of me, but it's happening. That's how strong this addiction is. So there's got to be answers. Starts, of course, with, like you say, taking your kids to church, being aware of the different changes in their grades and changes in their behavior and
Mm-hmm.
the red flags and just their friends.
Yeah, their circle of influence.
There's social media. There's so many things that you just have to be diligent about a parent. But parents have to work too. You can't be with your kids 24/7. So it takes aunts and uncles to get involved. I say get involved, everybody you can,
Mm-hmm.
to make a connection and just never give up.
Yeah.
Never give up.
That network of support, you know,
Yes.
just in general for kids as they're growing up, but even more so when they're going through a struggle,
Yeah.
like an addiction.
Yeah.
And yeah, several stories in there about you and your work and how, you know, it was like having two jobs. And I mean, there were a lot of things that I have flashbacks and memories of my grandmother, my mom's mom, that she would do with my uncle. That, you know, driving by. I know you were driving by his work at one time to make sure he was there.
Several
I mean, like,
times, yeah.
I mean, we would go at like the middle of the night and go down and drive by
Right,
my uncle's house.
right.
And, you know, and it just,
Check-
life is hard,
Yeah.
you know, especially the older we get and everything that could go on. I mean, it is hard, but having somebody, like you said, that loves you and that you can trust, and having someone that's there to support you in whatever phase of your life,
Right.
but also your faith.
Exactly.
And a couple things that I've pulled from this conversation. So when it comes to, I mean, anything from physicians to social media to, I mean, just friends that, you know, our loved ones could be spending time with, like, do your research.
Right.
And not only that, but potentially get second and third opinions and,
Yes.
you know, like, be open to the opportunity of what can come from seeing a licensed therapist.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Because there's some wonderful ones out there.
mhm.
And if you find the right fit, you know, and they can sit down and talk through what they're feeling. Because especially, I think for men in our society, young boys, in a lot of cases, they're expected to be strong and, you know, and not cry and, you know, don't talk about their feelings. And I think holding a lot of things in has really hurt a lot of our society, you know, just holding and not being able to talk about things. Because eventually, I think it comes out in other ways in your life.
Yeah.
That's where I started, like I say, the journaling. I couldn't just hold on to,
Yeah, you
to
gotta get it
everything I was
out.
feeling, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what else would you like to say?
Well, I would say that I've been blessed to have a wonderful son that I could sit down and talk to about so many different issues. He's missed every day, and just know it never stops. The pain never stops. You just have to understand that people are hurting and families are hurting, and I just, like I say, been blessed to have a son that I could laugh with. It was just such a wonderful part of our family. And just because I wrote a book and I'm being vulnerable about the things that he went through, the love's still there. I'm still so proud of him. He was an amazing, amazing young man, and and so many people loved him. And that's the thing, you know, if you are in addiction and you just think that the world is not going to go on without you, it will keep going, and you need to understand that you're an important part of it. You matter.
Mm-hmm.
You matter, and just understand that once you're gone, I mean, your life it affects everybody. Everybody's hurt by it, and you're loved more than you know. And he was loved more than he knew he was loved, though. He knew. He knew.
Well, so in closing, I want you to tell me about this picture.
This is a picture. Our neighbor actually was starting a photography business and just getting started, and really liked our kids very much. So she took Spencer and his sister down to a park and just started taking pictures of them, and came up with the most wonderful, wonderful pictures. And it was just a random, lucky, blessed thing that we had. And this is one of them. And this is cute with him with the longer hair.
How old did you say he was in this picture?
You know, I think he was like 15 or, no, it was maybe 16. 15. Yeah, he always looked older. So, yeah. So that was really neat, getting all those pictures. She took him to a park, and so, yeah, special.
Good memories.
Good memories. A lot of good memories. We have video of all his ball games and all of his graduations and family events and Christmas, and just lots to look at. It's just hard, but we'll get to it all.
Yeah. One day at a time.
One day at a time. Sometimes 1 minute at a time.
Absolutely. Literally, those words just went through my head after I said that, and they were coming out of your mouth.
Well, just, yeah, it's all what works for you, you know. If you get too far ahead of yourself, and it's like I just try to take it, I'll have like things built up, 4, 7, 8 things to do in 2 or 3 days, but if I look at that, I have to slow down and let's just take it one at a time. Don't worry about the others. Let's work through this one thing. And I honestly am surprised I'm sitting here today talking to you about this, because there was a time where I thought it was over for me, losing him. I really did. But when you have other children and other loved ones, it's not. You can't bow out.
Yeah.
You can't bow out. It's not the thing to do.
You
And that
keep
sounds,
fighting.
you know, for people that are freshly gone through this, that's are just words, but life will pull you forward if you let it. Just take the first step when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready, because they matter too.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming today
Thank you,
and doing
Brittany.
this interview with me.
Such an honor to meet you and spend time with you, and
I
just
know.
feel like we've become friends.
We have.
You're very special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, so if you're free this Saturday the 14th of 2024, you might be listening to this on a replay, but hopefully you're catching the initial episode when it airs. Saturday, September 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Maumelle Library in Maumelle, Arkansas. Go meet Miss Barbara, get one of her books, and be able to learn about what you can do with the Lord on your side and memories that you always have to hold on to and cherish, because life is not easy, but with God, all things are possible.
Amen to that.
All right. Well, until next time, whatever time of day it is that you are catching this episode, I hope that it's blessed for you, and we will catch you on the next episode of Spotlight with Britt.